JDs and gentlemen, we are going to be doing something a little bit different here today inside Watcher of Realms. I'm going to be going through every single faction inside the gallery. So when you come into the gallery on the left-hand side here, you have the Watchguard, North Throne, etc. We're going to be going through every single one of these factions and talking to you about the best heroes from each one of them. We're going to be doing 2 legendaries and 2 epics from each faction with a couple of honorable mentions for each in most cases. And I'm going to kind of walk you through my choices. I can't talk, apparently. That being said, though, before we hop into it, if you're liking the Watcher of Realms content, make sure to go ahead, hit that like button. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well. Share this with your friends. Share it in your Discord. Tell them all about the famous YouTuber Gearbear and his Watcher of Realms content. Let's go ahead and hop straight into it. We are starting with the Watchguard, a very strong, a very packed faction. Now, I want to just preface this by saying that there's going to be something very controversial, and it's a bit of a spoiler alert, but Kagiri and Sun Wukong both are not on this list, ladies and gentlemen. That is right. 2 of the strongest heroes inside the entire game are not on this list. Why is that? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't want to include a hero that is an exclusive, because as of right now, if you're watching this video, if you just started playing Watcher of Realms, you cannot get Kagiri or Sun Wukong. The only exception being is if Moonton decides to run them again, right? So they are essentially mandatory heroes for so much content, and there are some other exclusive heroes on this list, but we'll talk about that when we get there. All that being said, though, let's go ahead and hop straight into it. So the first pick here from the Watchguard should be pretty self-evident, and that is going to be Ingrid. Ingrid is hands down one of the best lords. So she is a Watcher Lord, right? She's absolutely fantastic. Ironically, she's not an Arbiter Lord, but she does have that dual faction membership, so her combined with a Praetus button is truly a force to be reckoned with. I'm not going to be going through the kits and stuff on every hero, but Ingrid has one of the highest ranges inside the entire game on her AoE magic ability, and then on her single target magic ability, she does big damage as well. You can see the reviews on her. She's got a 4.6 at the absolute lowest inside the game. She's pretty much a 5 everywhere else. Ingrid deserves to be on this list. And the other hero that we have is Diao Chan. Now, I know I mentioned that I wouldn't put exclusives on this list, or some exclusives on this list, but Diao Chan is kind of the exception, because if you don't have Diao Chan, you can still use Dolores in place of her and do kind of the same thing. There's a lot of inspiration heroes in the game, but Diao Chan is hands down one of the best. She can also be a healer. She has very unique range, though you do need her A1 to really get the most use out of her. So those are my 2 legendary picks for this particular faction. I also just want to say too that each hero can only be picked once. So especially for heroes that have dual faction membership. So for example, if I didn't pick Ingrid here, I may have picked her during the Arbiters, and when I went through Watchguard, people would be like, "Why didn't you pick Ingrid, bro? She's so good," right? Keep that in mind. Watch till the end of the video. I'm sure I'll probably talk about the hero you're thinking of. In terms of the epics from here, we have a couple of very, very good ones. So the one that I'm going to call out first is going to be Cyrene. Cyrene is absolutely fantastic. Everybody who's been playing for a while could get this free skin for her too, which is a very, very cool skin. But she is basically just a cost generator, right? So on her auto ultimate, she restores 12 cost and applies crit rate increase to 2 allies. You're not worried about that. But her cost restoration is fantastic. So every time her ultimate pops, she's going to restore her cost +1, right? So it's very, very strong. She's one of the strongest units in the arena for getting high cost units out there. So like your Ingrids, your Praetus, your Ymerits, those sorts of things, right? She can really help to enable those teams. And the other epic from this faction that we're going to talk about is going to be Iona, one of the best AoE mages inside the game at an epic level. Certainly she does big damage. Everybody is guaranteed to get her. You are guaranteed to get her for the low cost of like $7 if you decide to spend on this game. I got her. My account is free to play, right? I've only spent on the Lust skin, right? Because it was a pretty cool skin. And I still have her. I have her A5. She is a fantastic unit. Now moving on to the North Throne, we have some interesting picks here. There's a lot of good units inside the North Throne. Certainly, the one that we're going to pick first, though, is going to be Brokir. Brokir is one of the best tanks inside the entire game, certainly at the legendary level. He is very much rivaled, ironically, by a epic tank in the way of Olog, though, so that's something to consider as well. But Brokir is such a phenomenal unit that I think he deserves a lot of recognition. He gives physical and magic damage reduction to adjacent allies, and then when he has freeze, he gives himself a bigger, 3 times bigger version of the reduction to everybody, right? So that's huge. He can keep himself alive with his passives. This guy is tanky. You see him all the time inside GVG. He is such a good unit. He's an incredible little dwarf. And then the next hero from the North Throne, and I got my list off on my second screen here. That's why I look over there, but it's going to be Ardea. Now, Ardea, I picked as a Northerner because why not, right? She has very, very good range inside her attack as well. She has AoE damage, which is huge for any sort of a fighter, and she does big damage. She's based around getting very low HP and then just upping her damage, and she reduces her cost in the arena. So she's a fantastic arena unit. Very high ratings, as you can see everywhere. Now, for the epics, there's certainly a good few options here. I'm just looking at my list. Ironically, Olog does not actually get chosen for the list, so I would highly recommend Olog, right? He's a good unit. He's an honorable mention. Everybody gets him for free, but my first pick is actually going to be Mari. Mari is sensational. Once again, one of the heroes that we got a free skin for if you've been playing for a while. Fantastic looking skin, but she is so incredibly good. She's bringing AoE free, she's bringing slow and just so much control. And then with her talent, she's also inflicting the vulnerability for physical and magic damage on the target as well, which means that she's also increasing the damage that your units can do to the enemy. As you can see from the reviews, people like her pretty much everywhere. She is an absolutely sensational unit. And then the other epic to call out here is actually going to be Eostrid. Eostrid is a bit of a more niche pick. So as you can see, though, she has very good reviews in certain areas. With her ultimate, she's basically just doing AoE damage to enemies in range. She has a very good range on both her basic attack as well as her ultimate. So on her basic attack, it's just one tile in front of her. You know, fantastic range. But she also has a chance to inflict defense reduction, which is also going to increase her damage. And she is hands down one of the best units for Gear Dungeon 2 inside the entire game, which is pretty cool. So she's absolutely sensational. We're moving on to Nightmare Council, and this is, again, a very controversial spot because we're not going to be picking Sun Wukong and we're not going to be picking Kagiri, right? So who am I picking? Well, first of all, I'm picking Torador. Torador is so impactful for any account that may get him. He was certainly impactful for my account. He has defense reduction on the target with each basic attack, which is absolutely huge. He has the unyielding on himself when he's about to get clapped, right? Which is absolutely fantastic. He has stuns that he can inflict on the enemies. He has, you know, he can block a lot, right? So he's bringing CC, he's bringing defense reduction, he's bringing unyielding. He brings basically everything, not to mention his Lord ability is one of the best in the game because his faction is so incredibly strong. But essentially, every time a faction member is deployed, they're going to gain all the way up to 35% attack speed, which is insane. Their healing receive gets reduced by 15%, it's whatever. But then heroes or team members' basic attack has a 30% chance of landing an extra hit. When you start to look at some of the other options in his faction, like obviously your Sun Wukongs, your Kagiris, your Arrogance, your Salazars, your Hatsuts, your Lusts, right? Your Twylas, Moradins, all of these options, when they have that extra 30% chance to land an extra hit, that is insane. Now, the other legendary I'm picking from this faction is going to be Volca. Volca is such an incredibly underrated unit, in my opinion. I made a video talking about her recently on my channel. Make sure to go check that out if you're not too high on her, if you don't think she's too good. She is absolutely sensational. And the cool part is everybody gets her, but everybody also gets her A5 for free. And simply at A1, she takes away a quarter of your redeployment time for all allies. So in most cases, she's worth including in the team just for that alone. And in fact, you still see in some of the best Guild Boss teams, we have a Volca in there. It was certainly a big strat back in the day. But Not only that, she can do tons of damage, and she has a little bit of control in her kit as well. Plus, on her ultimate, she's setting them up with the vulnerabilities again, which is a huge thing for this game, right? So something to consider there as well. Moving on to the Cursed Cult. Now, for the Cursed Cult, we have a couple of interesting choices. First of all is going to be Anora, the weird dragon lady whose skin I actually really like. As you could see from, the previous skins, Moontod has a tendency to remove clothes and make them a little bit more risque, right? A little bit more X-rated, right? But with this skin, it actually worked the opposite way. So this was the default for Anora. It was out there. And then they actually put her into a very, very cool looking outfit, which, was pretty awesome, right? I was very, very happy with the skin. Everybody got it for free, but Anora is a fantastic unit. She is another exclusive, so unfortunately you can't get her unless Moonton opens up the guaranteeds for her. Save your shards, people. Guaranteeds they do are usually pretty good. But she has a synergy with Ymmerit, who's one of the unnamables inside the game. We're not going to be listing the unnamables on here because there's only 2 of them at this time, so it's kind of pointless, right? Obviously they're going to be in the top 2, right? Who would have thought? But she's absolutely fantastic. She brings huge AoE damage. She summons, right? So she summons a little dragon to fight with her. And she does control as well, right? So her and Ymmerit have the ability to control the enemies, which is pretty cool. And she is a sensational unit. Now, next up, we have Beelzebub. So this guy is very, very unique. This guy is one of 2 win conditions that you can bring for the Mother of Crow's Immortal Codex as well. It's either you bring Beelzebub or you bring Lady Anora, and those are your only options, right? So it's kind of crazy. This guy does a lot of control. He does very decent damage a lot of times in the AoE arena. I see cultist teams where he's actually a very competent damage dealer, and then obviously there's a lot of control with it as well. He brings like the slows and everything like that, and then he also does bring inspiration as well, which is huge. And then so whenever he's on a cultist team and launches a basic attack or cast Plague of Ruin, he's going to restore HP equal to 50% of the hero attack to 1 cultist ally in attack range. So if you have some sort of a cultist tank or fighter on the field, he can also be a pseudo healer for them essentially as well. Now for the epics here, we have some interesting ones. So first of all, Hollow is the way we're going to go. She's an absolutely fantastic healer. She has one of the best ranges inside the entire game as well. Once you actually get her awakened up, that's not an accurate range. But she also gives any sort like rage regen, right? So she applies rage regen, so she's going to restore 0.6 rage per second. So basically every time she heals somebody, every time she pops her ultimate, she's going to apply that rage regen to all allies in range every 1 second. And then she does also have another passive when she's awakened or ascended, promoted, as this game calls it. I play way too many gacha games. The terms are all just starting to kind of merge together. Whenever she's promoted, she then has an ability where every time she heals somebody, she's going to go ahead and give them a little bit of extra rage too. So she's fantastic. And then the other option that we picked from this faction is Aatrox. Now, Aatrox is a bit of a weirdo. He basically has the Halo of Sacrifice, so he's going to reduce his own HP. This is an ultimate, and he deals 70% AoE damage per second to enemies around, which is interesting. So after he dies, he also generates that. So he's going to do 700% damage over 10 seconds, essentially. Airborne units will still take damage, but it'll only be 350 instead of the 700%. Very, very cool unit. He's only a 5 cost inside the arena, only a 7 cost everywhere else. His initial redeployment time is 20 seconds. You can cycle this guy pretty quick. As you can see, people certainly seem to like him. Moving on to Infernal Blast. Now, for the legendaries here, I just want to make some call-outs. So first of all, Soul Cadence and Twin Fiend are both absolutely sensational legendary units. I'm not going to call them out, though, because realistically, what they do is either niche or can be done by somebody else, right? So Soul Cadence, for example, is hands down the best lord to use inside the Guild Boss Abyss 1, right? So Guild Boss 1, Abyss 1. But how many people are actually beating that at the time of it recording this video on September 3rd? Not many, right? So Twin Fiend is also very good for setting up DPS teams inside Guild Boss, but Pyros can also do it. I don't have Twin Fiend, so I don't have experience with the difference between the two of them, but I've been doing just fine with Pyros. Now, The champions that I'm picking from here, the heroes that I'm picking from here, first of all, is going to be Pharisee. Pharisee's fantastic. He is a healer, obviously, single target healer who has a massive range. Again, this range is not actually his range when he's promoted. It gets bigger, and he brings an inspiration. He brings AoE damage reduction to allies in range, so everybody is taking 25% less AoE damage, which really just enables you to survive inside Guild Boss 2. Semra had to take a bit of a beverage there. I'm only human, after all. And like I said, he brings inspiration as well. So he's kind of got everything going on. Up until the addition of Nerissa to the game, he was like one of the best AoE damage reduction units, and pretty much like a mandatory if you're trying to push really hard inside Guild Boss 2, or certainly inside Abyss 1. Now the other pick is going to be Hex. So totally not the Joker, totally not DC, right? Mr. Hex himself. He brings big damage to the table, as well as a lot of CC, as you can see from his reviews. Everybody loves him. He has a little bit of RNG to him, though, because his damage and his CC and all that is based around drawing cards. You don't have a guarantee which card you're going to draw. But overall, at the end of the day, he does enough damage and he does enough stuff to get the job done. His exclusive artifact is also one of the best artifacts inside the entire game when it comes to like best in slot for the hero. Absolutely fantastic unit. I wanted him for so long. I'd always watch Ash when he was talking about like, oh, you know, I beat Guild Boss 1 and I was using my Hex. And I was like, well, I'm not making fun of Ash, by the way. I'm just doing that voice to differentiate him from me. But I always wanted Hex based on his videos. I got Hex. I built him out. This guy did massive damage. I was not disappointed. So those are my two legendary picks. Now, going down here to the epics, we get depressingly few options. So it's pretty easy. First of all, the first epic is going to be Dolores. AoE inspiration unit when her ultimate pops, right? Very, very good unit. Enough being said. Now, we also have Soleil, who is going to be my next pick. And I will shout out Fastidious for this, because he really helped turn me on to her throughout his videos. He's always talking about how good Soleil is, and I have to say, she's pretty damn good. She does a lot of damage. She can really help you out inside the faction wars, whether it be Watcher or Infernal. She's a very, very good unit. Now, actually, I think it might be Imani he talks about. It's one of the two. I'm pretty sure it's Soleil, though. Now I'm second guessing myself, but Soleil was the pick. Soleil is a very decent unit, especially once you have her awakened up. So each attack is going to bounce to those targets, and then, you know, her attack interval increases by 30%, while basic attack is permanently converted into 2 fireballs in quick succession, right? So she's a very, very cool unit, certainly. She doesn't have a talent or anything like that, though, so she's kind of basic, but, I mean, it is what it is. Now, let's go ahead and go to the Star Piercers. So, inside the Star Piercers, first pick is going to be Eovar. Eovar is hands down the best lord for this faction. He brings big damage. He brings the ability for everybody to shoot further, essentially, right? Because they're all marksmen. And he does it at a very good cost while also being able to target airborne units. Absolutely fantastic lad. He is sensational. And he's bringing a ton of hits as well if you're needing to get through certain bosses that require a certain amount of hits on the shield. Now, I won't lie. After choosing Eovar, it was a very, 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 very tough decision to figure out who was going to be my next pick for the legendary. Because, again, I only have 2 legendaries that I can pick from this faction, right? And one of them's already gone. So I want to make a bunch of callouts here before we actually talk about the potentially best unit, in my opinion. Nyx, absolutely fantastic. She was my first legendary inside Watcher of Realms, so she has a special place in my heart. Of course, Sargok is an absolutely fantastic option, right? Sargok is very, very good. Silas, one of the best DPS units inside the entire game. Kai, fantastic. Pelagios, extremely underrated. Aspan, no, don't use him. Razak can do some decent damage. Allura is somehow now the best unit for Gear Raid 3. Vorn is absolutely sensational. Numera, sensational. I've done a review on her. Yuri, probably one of my favorite marksmen inside the game for 2 big reasons, which first of all is her range, and second of all is her ability to bounce her ultimate between different units. She is absolutely fantastic. Lady Alexandra, who nobody has. And then Erlang Shen who was essentially just released and does a crazy amount of damage. Those are the honorable mentions, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the honorable mention inside the Star Piercers. In case you couldn't tell, Star Piercers is one of the most stacked factions inside the entire game. But the unit I went with was one that I have not mentioned yet. And the astute among you are probably figuring out who it is, and that is Talon. Talon is sensational. She is a marksman who can also be deployed as a defender, and that is important. Why? Because you can equip marksman with the Ichor Chalice, but you cannot equip it on defenders. Ichor Chalice meaning that they heal every time they do damage. So her inside that artifact for any sort of ground-based content means that she has obscene levels of inspiration. And as a matter of fact, if we look through the builds here, I would imagine that most of these are going to be Ichor Chalice builds, especially if they're using her as a tank, which it looks like most of them are actually using her as a an archer, as a marksman. But her ultimate, or her passive rather, also means that she can basically rip off a buff every time you trigger her ultimate when she's in the marksman stance, right? So when she's placed on a platform instead of a ground tile, which means that you can get a lot of use out of her inside Guild Boss Semra. She actually makes it very consistently into my Semra 1 team every single week because she's one of the very few consistent buff removers that I have. She actually went in there and replaced... he's not even in this faction, is he? She went in there and she replaced the hunter guy whose name I've completely forgotten, but he's another legendary that people are talking about all the time. But Talon and Eovar are my picks for the legendaries from this faction. Let's go ahead and take a look at the epics. We have Theowen. Theowen is hands down one of the few epics that is receiving end game use inside the arena. I'm always seeing him inside Overlord as well as Platinum 3 for arena defense teams because he brings huge amounts of control and he also brings very decent damage. So this guy is absolutely sensational. I think he's a daily login champion as well. There's some cool skins for him that have been released, right? So if you're going to use this guy, you have plenty of ways to build him and you have plenty of looks to go with. The next pick is Lily. Lily has one of the coolest skins in the game, in my opinion, especially on like her alternate there, of course. But she brings a heal and she also brings a cheat death mechanic. So you can essentially keep somebody alive even when they would regularly die, which is absolutely fantastic. Since she's a Star Piercer, her healing range can be increased as well, which when that happens, it gives her one of the biggest healing ranges inside the entire game, which is super, super cool. Now, we are on to the Esoteria Order. Now, the legendaries for this one are pretty straightforward in my opinion. So my first pick is Valara, right? Pretty simple. She is an absolutely fantastic unit. She's ancient exclusive. She does AoE magic damage. She does tons of AoE magic damage. As a matter of fact, I actually have a guide for her on my channel. Make sure to go and check that out. But as you can see, people are pretty high on her every single area inside the game. And she even gets use inside the single target arena at Platinum 3 level. So the worst place she's rated, she's still very usable, which is just absolutely insane. She does so much damage. She's a tactician, so she can move between ground and platform units, and she's invisible when she's not ulting, which is just incredible. The next unit is still one of the GOATs in the game, and that is going to be Elowen, another unit that we got a free skin for. She is hands down one of the best rage regen units for your entire account. She can give basically 0.2% rage per second for 5 seconds to all allies on the battlefield every 5 seconds. So this is irrespective of where they're placed, whereas somebody like a Hollow or a Laurel require the units to be placed close to them or in certain positions to get the rage regen. Elowen says, screw you, I can rage regen no matter where I am. And on top of that, she gets this little wood elf that you can place and then immediately recall, and it's actually a cost generation technique as well, so it refunds for more than it costs, and then it also heals as well if that's something you need. Plus, she just casually brings one of the best debuff dispels inside the entire game. Now, going with the epics at this level, or in this faction, I'm actually going with Phelan as one of my first picks. Now, I picked the wrong one there. Phelan, in my opinion, is fantastic. She's bringing a ton of poisons, plus a fairly big version of magic resistance reduction. So she's enabling damage, she's bringing damage, and she has a crazy good range, and she does a ton of poisons. I've actually gone ahead and tested her on my channel as well. Look up just like Gerber Phelan or something like that. You'll find a video reviewing her. I think she deserves higher ratings than this, even though these ratings are pretty high. And then finally, for the other epic, we are going with Laurel, one of the best cost regeneration units inside the entire game. Place her down, pick her up, everybody has a shit ton more rage, right? Simple as that. Pretty straightforward. Chaos Dominion. We are picking one of the lords here, Valderon. Valderon has a huge kit. If you're trying to fight inside the AoE arena, single target arena, you know who this guy is. He is absolutely everywhere. He is very annoying to fight against because of his RNG and just how good he is. And he also enables Lubu, Cornelian, Sargak, Ardea, Luguru, and then also Valeria, right? So he enables some of the best units inside the entire game. He is absolutely sensational. The other legendary pick from this faction is Sargak. So Sargak basically just does big damage, triggers bleeds, ignores defense, all that sort of good stuff. He is a fantastic unit as well. We're already 26 minutes into the video, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to get through this. I have commitments this afternoon. I got to get this content out, right? So I'm not going into their kits into too much depth. That being said, though, once again, make sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the like button if you're enjoying the content. We have Jorge as the epic pick, right? Pretty straightforward. Epics we haven't already picked. We got Jorge as one of them. He brings a weird little plague. He's the only unit in the game, as far as I know, that has this. So it's AoE damage to an infected unit and around 10 enemies around them, and it cannot be dispelled, which is pretty cool. So he's got an autocast ultimate that can do that. He is a very unique looking unit as well. It'd be super cool to get like some skins for him or something like that, but as you can see, people kind of like him. He's very interesting. So he's a decent unit. And then Vargas was my other pick. Vargas just isn't really too special, but he's really the only other epic that we're able to pick from this faction, so it is what it is. Now, going on to the Supreme Arbiters, I'm going to start with the epics because there's literally one, right? So it's Elysia. She is one of my favorite epics inside the entire game, though. So she brings a mini version of the Praetus button with her Lord skill. And then she also has increased damage in the arena, right? So she's absolutely fantastic. And she is a staple of my Semra 1 team as well because of her Praetus button. She enables more damage. And then she also inflicts the stuns and everything like that as well. So she does a lot of damage herself as well. She can do some true damage. She can hit airborne units. She is fantastic. Now for the legendaries, we're going to start with this one. So this is Constance, who is yet another inspiration unit. So she can be placed on ground tiles and inspire your fighters, any sort of ranged units that might be placed around her, at the same time also blocking enemies if needed. So she is fantastic. She can heal as well. So she's inspiration, heals, and blocking all in one unit. Absolutely fantastic looking character. It doesn't get much better than that. And finally, the last hero for this list is going to be Praetus. We all know Praetus, right? He has reduced cost in the arena. He's got one of the best Lord skills in the entire game. He does big damage. He's a high cost unit at 25 base cost, right? But he is worth every single cost, in my opinion. Certainly, if you're going in the single target arenas and the AoE arenas, you know who Praetus is. As you can see from his reviews, one of the best reviewed heroes inside the entire game as well. That brings us to the end of this little walkthrough of the best heroes in every single faction, in my opinion. That being said, if you think I snuffed somebody or if I didn't make the right pick, definitely let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. And I mean, hell, if you want, leave your list down there for what your best units are as well. I'd love to hear it, love to see it. Hop into the Discord if you want to do some bragging, if you want to share some strategies, all those sorts of good things. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.